And please show yourself. Okay. We're about 6 minutes to. Hey, Gauteng just became cold, Matafa, these past few days over the weekend. Is it not so?
Definitely, Chair. Winter is upon us. You can't believe that actually so early, it's so nippy in the morning. At night, it's worse.
Yeah, but I think weekend was even worse. Than it's getting better now.
Yes.
And on Friday, we woke up to a chilly weather. How is Cape Town? Cape Town crew? Guys, we are not in Cape Town. Okay. Oscar.
Chairperson?
I'm in Gauteng. We need to hook up if we can.
Okay, yeah, we should, Chair. It's been a long while not seeing each other.
Yeah, let's talk after this.
Sure, Chair, we'll do that.
Yeah. It's worse we don't see you, or we are not sure whether we're talking to a ghost or to a real person. So I must check you up.
No, it's important, Chairperson.
No, that's fine. Hey, Musa.
Greetings, Chairperson Njan.
Fine, how are you?
I know, not bad, Chair. Yeah, gapile.
Okay, good to see you guys.
Thank you.
We're just 1 minute to.
Yes, Chair.
Ukhona uSifiso? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Is as Pendu. Good afternoon, everyone on the platform. The time is exactly 1400 hours. Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Standing Committee on Appropriations. Honorable members of the committee are welcome. Team Treasury, led by Dr. Mampo Modise, support staff of the committee, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be having a presentation from National Treasury on the 2021 Appropriation Bill and 2021 Special Appropriation Bill. This is a follow-up on the budget which was presented by the Minister of Finance on the 24th of Feb of this year. You'll remember that before we closed for the first quarter, we approved the Division of Revenue Bill. So after the Division of Revenue Bill, this committee then has to consider the appropriation bills. This is the process that we're involved in now to allow this process to proceed to the National Assembly sometime at the beginning of June and to go to the National Council of Provinces before it becomes the law. We have an agenda in front of us. Darren, do we have apologies?
Chairperson, good afternoon. Yes, Chairperson, we received apologies from Mr. Sarupen, Ms. Peters, and Ms. Dikhale. Ms. Dikhale is in the Rules Committee, but she said that she will join the meeting later if she is still in time. And then we also received apologies from the Minister and the Deputy Minister of Finance. That's it, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Just to finish the story, Honorable Peters, it's having a doctor's appointment. We also received an apology from the DG, National Treasury, Mr. Dondomo Khojane. He's having another commitment on vaccine. So he did call me and apologize for not being able to attend. But we have got the Deputy Director General, Dr. Mampo Modise, and her team. And Dr. Mampo, good afternoon, and Team Treasury. I think we know how we do it. We'll give you and your team maximum 1 hour, so that after that you allow the honorable members to interact with your presentation. Dr. Mampo.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, honorable members. Thank you so much for having the Treasury team. I'm with my colleagues, Chairperson, and we will take the committee through the presentations. I think today we have 3 matters that we would like to bring to the committee. The first matter that we would like to bring would be, of course, the Appropriation Bill. The second matter would be the Special Appropriation Bill that was also tabled by the Minister of Finance. And the last one, Chairperson, would be some of the proposals in terms of the changes in the vote names, but I will go through the presentation, and it's only 2 votes that we are bringing to your attention. So I am going to basically share the presentation with the committee. I hope the presentation is now visible. Yes, I actually think it's visible. So
Yes,
I would say.
Yes, it is, Mampo.
Oh, thank you so much, Chairperson. So I think basically when we were doing the preparations with the team, what we wanted to start with was just to remind the committee of its powers and roles and responsibilities and how the committee was established in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act. We also note down some of the powers and functions of the committee, but this is a standard presentation that we do. However, honorable members and chairperson, what we have found is that we think there has to be, or the roles between, or the relationship between the SCOA, our committee, and the portfolio committees, their relationship has to be strengthened, because I think in several meetings we have to explain the role of the Standing Committee on Appropriations vis-a-vis what the portfolio committees must do. So what we are requesting basically here, Chairperson and honorable members, is that Parliament, through SCOA, of course, strengthens the relationship with these committees. What we also think might be a good step forward is to invite some of these portfolio committees when we're doing this type of presentations, and when we come to SCOA to present on the spending reports. I think we can include some of these committees so that they understand the role of Parliament and the role of SCOA. Chairperson, you clarified it very well that basically we start with the fiscal framework, we then come to the division of revenue, and then we come to we basically come to the fiscal frame, the appropriation bill. So this is where we are at, and we're at step 3 where we're considering the appropriation bill. What we think we need to highlight, Chairperson and honorable members, is that this committee has the powers to change the allocations within the allocated baseline, of course, because as you said, Chairperson, you approve the division of revenue bill, but this committee can shift funds within votes if they feel that the decisions made by the executive are not in the best interest of the public. So when we do the presentation, there is still room for this committee to change these allocations. So basically, Chairperson, just going straight to the background and the bill. So when we came to present as National Treasury in the MTBPS, we came with a very dire picture, and what the committee did was, or what Parliament did was, to approve a fiscal framework that is based on consolidation. So we were tasked to go look for close to 300 billion in terms of budget reduction. So that fiscal framework was approved in the 2020 MTBPS, and it was emphasized again in the 2021 budget review, where we had to look at finding the 300 billion. But Chairperson and honorable members, as you can imagine, 300 billion is a significant amount of money, and to find it within the existing envelope basically meant that everyone had to take the cut. It was not possible for us to preserve some departments and only look at other departments, because all the departments have priorities, they have mandates. So we had to look at how do we best then do the reductions across the board, but try to also look at the impact on service delivery and the impact on economic growth. So what we're proposing to you is these budget reductions, where we basically looked at or tilted the reductions towards what we call current expenditure, but we protected some of the capital spending, and that the basic reason there, Chairperson, is that this problem is a growth problem. If we don't have economic growth, then we definitely won't be able to get revenue, and we're not going to be able to stabilize our debt. So when we were looking at the budget reductions, the one thing that made sense and the priority that we had to consider was infrastructure spending, so that we can have some economic growth. So basically what I'm presenting to you today would be some of the decisions and the implications of these budget reductions. So basically, Chairperson, this is just a summary of the numbers and basically where the reductions fall. So basically, the main categories where we've seen significant reductions will be one, the skills development levy. But the skills development levy is not because we reduce their budget. I mean, they get their income from the levies, but there was a decision by cabinet that we stop the contribution of the skills development levy for a few months, and as a result, it meant their revenue was much lower. We looked at the program baseline reductions, and basically the chairperson, we're looking at transfers to public entities, we're looking at goods and services, so those we're looking at about 40 billion reductions. But as you may be aware, another a category where we've seen these budget reductions would be the wage bill. But what we also had to consider, Chairperson, was how do we then deal with the pandemic, because it's still with us and there's pressures coming through. So from that end, basically we had to allocate more for the COVID-19 response, but we also had to allocate funding for the employment, the Presidential Employment Initiative, and that amount, Chairperson, you will see it in the provisional allocation of 11 billion. So that is the money that we will be allocating to different departments for them to achieve the Presidential Employment Initiative. So basically, Chairperson, we also had to increase the contingency reserve. When we came to you in the budget or the MTPPS, the contingency reserve was only 5 billion, but because we are unsure of how the pandemic is going to evolve, we had to allocate further funding for the contingency reserve, mainly to be used by or for health or for the to respond to COVID. So, Chairperson, this is just in summary of what we need to do. What we also did this time around, Chairperson, was to assist with the committee to look at the underspending of different departments. But as you can see, this slide just shows that, first of all, the underspending is relatively lesser in different departments, and the only department that shows a consistent underspending would be cooperative governance and traditional affairs, where the underspending on average is about 1.5% between 2%. And mainly this is because of the strict conditions that we attach to the conditional grants. But if you look at overall the different departments, you can see that there hasn't been significant underspending between 2012 and 2019-20, which shows that the department is starting to feel the pressure of the budget reduction. But this is just additional information, Chairperson, that we thought it would be good for the committee to have when you do your deliberations. Then, Chairperson, what we did was we looked at the budget reductions that are proposed. So basically, how did we calculate these budget reductions? We basically took the numbers that were published in the 2020 budget for 21-22, and then we compared those with what is in this year's budget, or this is E&E for 21-22. So basically, how you can interpret this is that at the time of the 2020 budget, what the E&E was proposing was that the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation would get 524.3 million. But because of the budget reductions, what we are proposing today in the Appropriation Bill is 454 million. So basically this means that from what we were proposing last year to now, the difference is 70.3 million lower. So how we calculated the share of the reductions to the 2021-22 budget is that we took the difference and we divided it by the 2021 E&E. So basically the Department of Planning and Monitoring, their proposed budget from last year is 15.5% less than what we're proposing this year. So how we highlighted it is that we started with the departments with the most significant reductions as a share of their budget, and then we move towards some of the departments who had allocations. What we also did, Chairperson, was to basically in short or in summary, try to explain to the committee the implications of these reductions, because departments are different and the implications are very different. So basically, Chairperson, the first one, as I said, planning and monitoring, the main implications here would be the fact that they will really struggle to fill the vacancies or the positions, and it's the same as the public service and administration. So most of the departments that are policy department or admin departments, the main thing, and most other departments, of course, the main thing is that the filling of their vacant or critical vacant positions will definitely be affected with these budget reductions. But departments such as correctional services, what we are picking up is that these reductions will definitely lead to a decline in the inmate ratio. So basically what we were striving for as government was 1 to 5, as in one warden for 5 inmates. But with these reductions, we looking at that increasing to 1 warden for 7 inmates, which is a risk in itself. But if you look at police, you also will see that the implications would be their limitations on recruiting young and physically active police officers, because the reductions will definitely have an impact for the police force. We're also looking at departments such as the Civil Secretariat for the Police Service, where basically their core function was to looking at the coordinations, the legislation and the policy development, and most of those programs will certainly be affected. And then there's other entities or departments, Chairperson and honorable members, where there will be an increase in the case backlogs because of these reductions, and that maybe mainly is through the filling of vacant posts, but also some of the entities such as the court services and the NPA will definitely be affected, because there would be a reduction in the transfers of these entities. I mean, for employment and labor, as much as the implication is 10%, but for that department, what will be the implications apart from the filling of critical positions would also be transfers to the CCMA, because it's one of its entity, and they will be affected. The biggest implications, Chairperson and honorable members, for the Department of Defense would be their ability to implement the defense review that was done in 2015, and basically this will definitely have an implication in the SNNDF's capabilities. So basically some of the implications are noted there. When we move to other departments, for example, the presidency, we're looking at there's a new project management office that still requires additional capacity to support the presidential projects, but because of the 9.5% reductions, the implications will definitely be capacitating that office, and it will be difficult because they will not have funding for that. In terms of Parliament, where there's the 8.7% reductions, apart from vacant posts, the implications would be the ICT infrastructure projects, and that will become unaffordable or unfunded. Chairperson, your request was very specific in terms of Statistics South Africa, where you asked us to elaborate on the implications for Stats SA. So, Chairperson, I think apart from filling of vacant positions, the budget reductions since 2012, of course, will have an impact on funding of the different surveys that already exist, but also the new surveys and the coordination of surveys that is conducted by other departments will definitely be affected because of these budget reductions. But Chairperson and honorable members, instead to say what we need to be on the lookout for is the allocations that we have done for the census. So last year we allocated close to R1 billion for the pilot project of the census, and this year we allocated funding for the full census. what is going to be a problem is if states say cannot utilize all of that funding this year, because what it means, Chairperson, is that if states doesn't conduct the survey, the census, and they don't finish the census within the parameters of their budget, it means next year we'll have to now come to the committee and look for additional funding to give to States SA. So I think the priority for States SA should be to do the pilot, to do the census with the funding that has been allocated to them, so that we avoid a situation where we get to next year and they don't have funding to complete the census. So I think the discussions that we will need to have as the committee with Statistics SA is how far are they in preparations of the census, and are they on track to utilize the funding that is allocated for the census. Then Chairperson, there's other departments, of course, with the implications, but I think here the one that I would like to highlight to the committee is basically the departments that have the EPWP program and the implications thereof. So as we would know, the Department of Forestry or Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, Tourism and Small Business Development, they have a lot of programs that assist in employment creation and also that assist in or for small businesses. And these reductions for these departments, Chairperson, will definitely impact on the number of beneficiaries that will be receiving these funding. So the main impact there would be who will be getting the funding. The one impact, Chairperson, that I think in this slide is worth mentioning would be the budget reductions for higher education and training, where there was already a bit of noise on the ability for NSFAS to produce or to cater for most of the students. We did, of course, work with the Department of Higher Education to try and find money within the department. But Chairperson, it doesn't come without consequences, or it doesn't come without the department had to look at what is more important. Do we fund the students? Do we look at university subsidies? What do we do with infrastructure grants? Because of the situation we are in, the Chairperson, it's very difficult to move funding from infrastructure to NSFAS, because it means your infrastructure grants then will be impacted, then you don't really have much for infrastructure. But we did work with the department to try and reprioritize within their budget to try and basically ensure that NSFAS has sufficient funding for this year. We did manage to do that, but we will still have to have a proper discussion, Chairperson, on how we're going to fund these students going forward, because the money that we managed to find was for this appropriation bill, which is for the INE. And I think when we come to the MTPPOS, we will have options on how we can deal with the funding pressures in NSFAS for the students. And what is good is that the president has also tasked the different departments to look at the sustainability of this program. And I think when we come back in the M2BPS, we will have proper assessment on how we think we can, going forward, be able to sustain this fee-free higher education policy. But for now, we managed to find the funding within the department's budget. And as I said, some of these programs will have to be stopped. Some of them will have to be implemented using longer period instead of maybe 3 years. We'll have to implement some of these for 5 years, just to make sure we can stretch the little money that we have left. Then Chairperson, there's other basically departments where the largest implications in this slide would mainly be for transport, and we're just looking at the budget for PRASA because they're still struggling a bit to spend their capital budgets. But we also looked at the provincial road grants. But what is also a problem, Chairperson and honorable members, is that basically when we looked at the reductions in transport, the biggest implication there would be the maintenance budget on SANRAL. and some of the operational or departmental operations. So the moment you start tapping into the maintenance budget on SANRAL, basically you starting to see a deterioration in your road network, and it's going to take us a while to get to a point where we can reallocate for this budget. So I think what worries us in terms of these budget reductions in the transport sector is the implication on our road network and whether we can afford to reduce this maintenance budget, and what will that do to the cost of doing business for the businesses. One other thing, Chairperson, in this slide that one has to look at basically would be the budget reductions in social development. What we had to do, as you see, Chairperson, compared to a department such as planning and monitoring, where their reduction was 15%. Social development reductions are basically 3.2%, but because of the magnitude of the numbers, we're looking at a 6.5 billion reduction. And basically this resulted in an increase on social grants of less than inflation. But if you look at the share of reductions from what we proposed last year, social development is one of those departments where we're only looking at a relatively smaller share of reduction compared to the allocation. And this was an attempt to try and preserve some of the social grants because we understand the importance of the social grants. So other departments, unfortunately, got a bigger, a larger increase the larger reduction as a share of their allocation, but social development was one of those where we're only looking at a 3.2%, where we're trying to preserve some of these or minimize the impact of these budget reductions on the people who receive social grants. Then, Chairperson, if you just look at basic education, one visible implication is that the Funza Lushaka Bursary program will definitely be affected, and that means that fewer beneficiaries will receive support. Then, Chairperson, we have a Department of Health where there is a net increase, of course, and this was because of the allocations we have to make in terms of the COVID-19 vaccine program, but it wasn't totally protected because there are some reductions in other programs and conditional grants of around 4 billion, and the largest reduction basically was in the HIV and AIDS grant component. The National Treasury, Chairperson, there's an increase of 12.7%, and this is the proposal of funding the land bank, but I will come to the slide where I show the committee the implications of what it means for the committee if you support the funding for the land bank. And the last one, Chairperson, would be public enterprises, where basically their budget is increased, of course, by 31 billion, and most of this money is allocations for ESCOM. So in total, Chairperson, if you look at the total, you will see that on average, or as a net effect, the budget from last year, it's a reduction of 0.8%, but basically if you look at the gross level, the total reductions would be minus 4.8%, but the additions for health, for National Treasury, and for public enterprises amount to 4%. But I hope the committee has noted the implications that we brought to the committee, so that we wanted to make sure this time around that we are very transparent and the committee can deliberate in terms of the implications of these budget reductions, so that when you make recommendation, at least we did enable you, or we did provide the information on the implications. So basically, Chairperson and honorable members, what all of this means is basically it means most departments will struggle to fill up their vacant posts, and also their operational budget will definitely be affected. And while we tried to basically look at goods and services where they can't really travel or have conferences, that amount was too small to get us to 300 billion. So even when we looked at what we can save because of COVID, the magnitude that we needed for this money was so large that we couldn't just look at goods and services. I mean, for peace and security, just in summary, Chairperson and honorable members, the biggest implications would be worsening of the staff to inmate ratios. We're looking at worsening of police to population ratios. We're looking at the limited recruitment of young people, the delays in implementing the defense reviews, and an increase in the backlog. We're looking at the lesser transfers to public entities such as the CCMA, NFSAS. In terms of DECO, what we see as implications is the membership fees to these international organizations, such as your, UAU, your New Development Bank. Definitely those will be impacted, Chairperson, with these reductions. We're looking at ICT and other infrastructure projects, community work programs, as I say, and for State SA, what is core is the fact that funding for new old and poverty surveys will definitely be implicated. But as I said, the biggest conversation we need to have with State SA will be for them to do the census within the period of the allocated budget, because for next year, it's going to become a big problem if we have to find another 2 billion for the census. So we urge State SA to basically conclude this process within the years where the budget is allocated. And then these are some of the implications, and the additional funding was for health, the land bank, and for ESCOM. So, Chairperson, what I need to bring to the attention of the committee is how this allocation for the land bank has been proposed in the budget. So basically what is being proposed is that the land bank will receive 7 billion, which is 5 billion in this current year, which is 21-22, and 1 billion in 22-23, and another 1 billion in 23-24. But the budget review states that the money will have to be reprioritized within the budget. So what that means, Chairperson, is that the 7 billion will have to come from the existing budgets of the departments. Now, I have made a slide, Chairperson, I hope I can explain it without confusing myself and the committee. So basically, Chairperson, when we do reprioritization, we look at the allocations for all the departments. So what scenarios I've put forward is basically if we reprioritize from all the departments the same amount of money, it means basically we will come in October with the budget for example, social development being reduced by 1 billion. If you look at what is that as a share of the budget is 0.5%. But there are implications, Chairperson, for specific departments. So basically, if we had to consider reducing a 1 billion from the Department of Social Development, it's definitely going to affect the 30 rand increases that the minister announced at the time of the budget. If we have to reduce the Department of Higher Education and Training by 500 million, that will have implications for NSFAS and other transfers. So if you look at scenario 2, Chairperson, what I did just to try and show the committee is that if you exclude the first 5 departments in your pool of departments where you're going to do the reductions, it means the rest of the departments that are left, their share of contribution increases significantly. So if we take out the first 5 departments, it means, so for example, for health, instead of contributing 319 million, if we include all departments, they have to then forego 756 million, which is 1.2%. For defense is the same. If we include all departments, it means 236, but if we exclude the first 5 departments, it means their contribution will have to increase to over 500 million. And then if you exclude the first 10, it means, of course, the ones that are left, the increase becomes higher. So basically, the more you exclude the departments from the reductions, basically the larger the quantum for the departments that are remaining will have to be in order to get to the 5 billion. So basically, Chairperson, what we are proposing here and what I wanted the committee to know and understand is the fact that if the committee supports the proposal by the executive that the land bank receives 5 billion, it means when we come in the MTBPS, we will come with reductions for all other departments to fund this 5 billion. So basically this will be treated the same as the South African Airways. So I think what is I wanted to emphasize is the fact that if we get asked to exclude specific departments because of the implication, then it means the rest of the departments will take a much bigger fall, including, of course, departments such as STSA and basic educations and others. So this is the implication of the proposal by the executive to fund the land bank through reprioritization. Chairperson, as I stated earlier, basically we are asking the committee to assist us because there were name or there were vote changes that were announced by the president, and basically we're asking the committee to consider amending the appropriation bill to reflect the two departments as for the first one is currently in the bill, environmental, forestry and fisheries, and the proposal is that we amend this and we put it as forestry, fisheries and environment. And then the second department where there's a name change or we're requesting the culture, and the proposal basically is sport, art and culture. So instead of the sports, we just have sport without the S, but these are just the technical corrections in terms of the names. They don't affect the allocations, Chairperson and honorable members, so it doesn't change the funding allocations in the bill. This is just a change of name. And then Chairperson, you also asked us to look at or to talk about the special appropriation bill. So there's basically 3 items, Chairperson, in the special appropriation bill. The first one was for health, because when we did the allocations in the MTBPS, we were still not sure about the delivery of some of the vaccines. So basically we were able to bring some of these vaccines earlier in the year, and we're basically proposing that 1.5 billion be given to the Department of Health in the 2020-21 fiscal year so that they can sign the bilaterals and then they can order some of the vaccines. And then the second one, Chairperson, that we had to propose money for was for the Department of Social Development, and this was for the extension of the Social Relief of Distress Grant, and the proposal was 2.8 billion for 2020-21. And then the third one, Chairperson, basically is that when we came to ask for funding for SAA, what we did in the Appropriation Act was that we earmarked the funding mainly for the business rescue, and in the plan of DPE, they included giving some of this funding for their subsidiaries. So basically the way in which the Appropriation Act was drafted was that the 10 billion or the 10.5 billion cannot be used for anything else other than the business rescue. And within that business rescue, the department had some of the support of 2.7 billion to their subsidiaries. So what we are asking here, Chairperson, is that we earmark a 2.7 billion from the business rescue, and we allow the Department of Public Enterprises, NSAA, to transfer the funding to its subsidiaries. This is not additional funding, Chairperson. This is part of the 10.5 billion that has already been approved by the Parliament to go to public enterprises. This is just earmarking it for the business rescue purposes and allowing the Department of Public Enterprises to basically allocate this funding to its subsidiaries. Chairperson, that's it from our side. So we're requesting 3 things from the committee today. The first one is for the committee to look at the implications of the budget reductions that are proposed in the Appropriation Bill. We're also asking the committee to consider the Special Appropriation Bill with the 3 departments that are affected, which is Health, Social Development, and Public Enterprises. And then thirdly, we are asking the committee to look at the name changes of the 2 votes, which is Environmental Affairs, Sports and Culture. And sorry, Chairperson, lastly, we're asking the committee to also consider the implications of funding of the land bank and what it means to reprioritize funding of the land bank, because in the MTBPS, we will have to bring further reductions that are definitely going to impact the different departments just to fund the land bank. So we asking the committee to consider that before enacting the Appropriation Bill. Thank you so much, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, Dr. Mampo. Darren, before I request the honorable members to interact with the presentation by Dr. Mampo. I think the presentation was loud and clear, Dr. Mampo. But before I allow the honorable members to interact with your presentation, Darren, there were some apologies which came in. Just for the record, can you say them?
Chairperson, yes. Subsequent to the starting of the meeting, Ms. Ntlangwini indicated that she is not feeling well, and then I also received an apology on behalf of Mr. Kwankwa.
Thank you. Those apologies are noted. Honorable members, here are the presentations. I will be generous. I'll give you 5 minutes per honorable member, and then we see how far we go. Can I get indications of people who would like to raise questions? Honorable Mataba.
Mlenzana.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mlenzana.
Afternoon, Chairperson. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And how are you?
I'm good, Chairperson.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Honorable Mlenzana.
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso. Any other honorable member? Okay. Let's see. Let's go 5 minutes, and let's say I will start with Honorable Matafa.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me first start by thanking Dr. Mampo for the presentation. It's very clear, comprehensive, and responds to many challenges that actually obtain as we speak in the country. The first one, Chair, is in terms of the challenges that are obtaining, is the issue of Mango Airlines. And Dr. Mampo covered it on the last slide when she speaks to the issue of earmarking the 2.7 billion from the business rescue, but to allow allocation to subsidiaries in the airline industry. One of them is Mango. The amount that was initially intended to reach Mango, given the challenges that Mango is facing of having to ground certain planes and cancel certain flight trips that were allocated, will the amount that was earmarked at that particular time be sufficient to cover, firstly, what it was intended for, and secondly, any additional cost that the airline is likely to incur as a result of the disruption that was reported in the media? Or will it require at a future time that National Treasury then comes back again to Parliament and request additional funding? The second one, Chair, it's a more generic question. The deductions that we see in various departments, are they aligned with previous performance, especially when it comes to underspending by these departments, or it was just a simplified approach of saying if we reduce 6% there, 7% there, we should be able to save? I'm asking this, Chair, because you might find a situation where a particular percentage is reduced from a particular department, which under normal circumstances, its spending is better compared to other departments who experience the same reduction. So I just want to find what is the thinking or the thinking that went into the amounts that were identified of reduction from these departments. And the second one, on the reduction of the main departments, Dr. Mampo succinctly covers the impact of this reduction in the functioning of the departments. I'm interested to know, has Cabinet shown any mitigation approach in terms of how then do you mitigate the effects of this particular possible challenges given the current resources? So meaning in terms of crime fighting, we are saying that it might reduce the number of filling of vacancies and also hamper the employment of an active force. How then do we ensure that the crime stats do not increase using the current resources that will not necessarily be affected by this particular reduction? On small business, Chair, this one it's not in the slide, but I'm interested to know how would National Treasury approach it going forward? Because it's an issue also that has been in the lips of many people, including the minister of the particular department. This is the allocation of the 200 billion loan guarantee scheme that was given to the banks to manage on behalf of government. What are lessons drawn from that particular approach? How will Treasury approach this situation differently? Because us, as public representatives, we are receiving feedback that some of the sectors of society, especially Black entrepreneurs, did not actually experience the joy of having this scheme advanced by their government, and they were excluded because the banks have also regulations and requirements that would have excluded some of those people that were supposed to have benefited from this particular loan guarantee scheme. So I'm just saying, next pandemic or next disaster happens, how then do we respond as government when such funds are available so that even those sectors that are excluded this time are benefiting going forward? Now, Chair, over the MTF, the Treasury proposes fiscal measures whereby they intend to reduce non-interest spending by 300 billion. And I agree with Dr. Ampo that it's not a small feat. My question there would be, has this non-interest spending been achieved in the past 5 years where it has been identified before, if it was? And what measures will the National Treasury assist departments to implement in order to ensure efficiency in spending and improving revenue management? For now, Chair, let me pause there. These are the questions that I have for the team. But once again, thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to participate in the discussion. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. I think you will have a second round. Can I, Honorable Mlenzana?
Thanks, Chairperson, for the opportunity, and good afternoon, Dr. Mampo. Long time no see, but fortunately, I could see you in my screen, though you can't see me because of connectivity. Chairperson, Let me start with a generic question here. Today, Chair, I woke up more interested on economic growth and recovery in the main. If Dr. Mampo could, just as a way of preamble to responses to my questions, indicate to us if this presentation seeks to achieve the whole envisaged economic growth and recovery. If yes, what are the pointers in terms of facts and figures? Would you, through such reductions, Dr. Mampo, achieve this envisaged economic growth and recovery? Chair, the projections in the minister's budget speech, the minister is talking economic growth, which was expected to rebound to 5.5% in 2021, but then spared by the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines. And that the South African economy is expected to rebound by 3.3% this year, following the 7.2% contraction in 2020, and average 1.9% in the outer 2 years, and other policy measures. Related to my first question, I have these questions. Do these projections, Dr. Mampo and Tim, which were made in February, still hold? How is the National Treasury ensuring that the whole government is focused on achieving the necessary growth targets in order to create jobs and raise government revenue? Are the plans in the EPP, Dr. Mampo, consummate with the President's State of the Nation Address commitment that the economic recovery cannot lead to the return to the old normal? What evidence? Remember, I spoke, Chairperson, of facts and figures this time around. What evidence can be shared in this regard? Chair, there is a reduction in the allocation to the Department of Water and Sanitation. Will this not exacerbate the looming debt crisis within South Africa's water boards? The last but not least, Chairperson. In fact, I've got the last two questions. Your slide 11, Dr. Mampo, depicts levels of major underspending. Has Treasury undertaken an analysis comparing underspending and the rapid growth in unfunded commitments and or levels of accruals within government departments? Perhaps, Chair, because of time, let me put on hold. I will come back if you give me for this last question. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mlenzana. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Dr. Mampo, for the presentation. I just want to get into the area of the national health insurance. As we have learned, and through the number of pronouncements, even in the economic recovery plan, the issue of national health insurance is one of the priorities that that the Department of Health is supposed to make sure that implements without failure. Now, I just want to get from Dr. Mampo, whether do you see any realization of this rollout for the implementation of the national health insurance, being realized after these reductions have been implemented? Do we see any point where we will, realize soon the importance of rollout of the NHI as it will be affected by this reduction, and what Treasury thinks around that, because it's one of the key area of implementation when it comes to issues of health, and also be in a position to can intervene during this pandemic situation. Secondly, is I just want to get into the area of, you know, what the Department of Land Reform and Agriculture has announced with regard to, you know, redistribution of 700,000 hectares for farmland. And we have seen that now seemingly there's it will call upon now for the emergence of small scale farmers to come in. But then what you realize is that already there are big commercial farmers who have been existing. But one's view is that seemingly this has targeted already existing big commercial farmers. And now the small scale farmers have been sidelined when it comes to, you know, securing a loan with collaterals. So I just want to understand from Dr. Mampo, how does the treasurer comes in this area? Because primarily when you talk about economic recovery and targeting of small, medium enterprises, one of those people are small scale farmers also included there. But now with the difficulty that now there's a requirement in terms of collateral, it's going to be very difficult for them to can, you know, secure any loan. So what is the role of the Treasury now? How Treasury is going to come into that space to make sure that now the small, medium or emerging farmers are not sidelined during that process. Now, as I move forward to other area of oversight, as a committee, I think on a number of occasions we have been as a scorer, we have been experiencing this, you know, through the performance indicators of various departments, which have been agreed and known to Treasury, National Treasury. But what we have noticed is that National Treasury and Department of Monitoring Evaluation have given some departments a soft landing for reporting to Parliament with high levels of achievement, whilst the department is underperforming in terms of delivery and critical socio-economic transformation programs. Now, I just want to get from Dr. Mampo, how is National Treasury and government broadly dealing with this issue, where departments through APPs are reporting to have scored very high on their set target, but failed to deliver on their key mandates? And thirdly, and secondly, is what policy instruments are being implemented to ensure a better quality of spending of public funds across departments and public agencies and state-owned enterprises? So, Chair, those are the few questions that I wanted to pose from Dr. Mampo and her team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Thank you, Dr. Mampo, for the presentation. And let's accept that again, the conditions under which you are dealing with the appropriation bill are very, very trying conditions, especially as far as
Chairperson.
yes.
In my hand, I tried to raise.
Oh, okay. Please come in, Honorable Dihale. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't hesitate. We are few. Just shout at me, eh?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Actually, my voice is not allowing me to talk today. That is why I did not want to talk, to raise my hand, to raise my voice. So, but I decided to form part of of this. Let me firstly apologize for coming late. I'm sure they did mention my apology. I was in another meeting. And let me join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation from our doctor, Dr. Mampo. So I have two questions, Chairperson. The first one is on a special appropriation bill. She mentioned the department that she wants us to look on. I don't know whether you are able to hear me, Chairperson.
Yes, loud and clear. We can hear you, Honorable Khale. Continue.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So my worry is that I don't hear her mentioning the Department of Defense. Can I request that she include the Department of Defense as she is looking on the Department of Health, Education, and the other one? I am sure we do not want to have an experience of what will happen to the Department of Defense if they run short of money. There are a lot of problems that are happening now with DNL, and it's not really a good thing to our country. So my request is that we request the Treasury to check on defense also. Actually, defense needs a lot of money compared to
using their jobs. So the social services must also try to cater for those people. The coronavirus pandemic is with us. Again, more expenditure is needed there. So it does give the country a very, very difficult circumstance under which it deals with the appropriation bill. But nevertheless, we must find our way. I think before I get into my questions, I think one thing that we must harp on Dr. Mampo, is that our panacea will come from economic growth. We'll cut and cut until we can't cut anymore. I think it's important that National Treasury should time and again reflect on the growth initiatives and for us to see some qualitative development as far as that is concerned. Would like Treasury again to keep track on what is happening on the ERRP, which was presented by the President, because that's the solution to our very constrained fiscal ability to deal with the challenges of the country. So what I'm saying is that we would like the National Treasury to come and tell us exactly what is happening as far as that is concerned, so that we are able to see that there is progress. Because yes, we're dealing with the cutting because of the situation we find ourselves in. But I think all of us have said that our problems will be solved if we can get our economy back to a growing economy. I thought I should start at that. The South African Statistics Council has stated that it will withdraw its support for official statistics to states SA because it doesn't want to endorse unreliable data. They argue that the money that has been put aside for the census is not sufficient. So perhaps the question is that of all the things, is National Treasury not worried about the impact of having unreliable statistics and unreliable data? Because of all the things that you do, first and foremost, you are so much reliant on what comes out from States SA. How do we mitigate that? How do we ensure that? Because what you may find is that we'll come together and talk about things only to find out that whatever we're trying to do is based on unreliable numbers. So I'm talking to the allocation that do we think that it is a wise thing to do of all the departments that we are dealing with? I take the point that any department that you can call here will argue that it needs more resources. But do you think that States SA, if you look where we are and the need for reliable data and reliable, reliable data and reliable information upon which we formulate our strategies, our policies, I think we need to look into that. For instance, how would we ensure as government that allocations to basic, I know that last time members did raise an issue about too low the contingents, but I still think that we have gone overboard as far as increasing it from 5 billion to 11 billion rand. Yeah, you about the decrease at DECO. You said some of the implications may be our failure to pay our subscriptions. What are the implications for that? For instance, supposing that we don't pay our subscriptions to AU or we don't pay to BRICS and other we don't pay our subscriptions to the Development Bank, African Development Bank. What are the implications? Are they not going to cut our membership? I just want to understand the implications better there. Yes, there's an allocation of 7 billion rand to the Land Bank for the next coming 3 years. Dr. Mabu, you remember last time we allocated 3 billion rand. I think we'd like to have an account of that, what has happened, what is happening, because I'll tell you, we hear that we get the news that there are still problems at the Land Bank, but when we recapitalized the Land Bank to the tune of 3 billion rand, we thought that we were dealing with that. Now, for instance, I've heard farmers that are saying that the Land Bank is not giving out the loans that we argued in Parliament, that the reason why we're recapitalizing the Land Bank was to allow it to do these things. Obviously, to repay its creditors, but that was going to allow it to start lending money to the farmers in general and to the emerging farmers, black farmers in particular. If you look at the departments, one of the few departments which is getting more money is the Department of Public Enterprise. And again, it's mainly ESCOM. I think this committee has agreed that energy is critical for reigniting the economy. What's your view, Dr. Mampo? The recapitalization of ESCOM, do you think that it is delivering the desired results as far as we are concerned? I would like you to share with us the view of the department and your view. I think I would leave it at that for now, and allow you to respond. I think if we still have time, if perhaps let's do that so that you respond with your team. If we have got some follow-ups on what you have said, we'll take it from that time. Dr. Mampo. Dr. Mampo, are you there?
Yes, Chairperson, I'm here. Sorry for that, I was muted. So Chairperson, I think I'm going to deal with the generic questions, and then I am going to ask my team to look at the specific departments. So basically, Chairperson and honorable members, this budget has been one of the most difficult budgets we had to do. So in the past, we had to do a fiscal consolidation, but we would be looking at numbers ranging between 15 to 20 billion. In other years, we're looking at 10 billion. The biggest number that we had to look for was the 56 billion that was reprioritized for funding fee-free higher education. And what we did at that time, we did a proper assessment of underspending. We looked at the growth rate in different programs, but what we are facing right now is a budget reduction of 300 billion. Chairperson and honorable members, it is not possible to exclude certain departments in terms of trying to find this amount. In the past, what we managed to do very well was to protect social grants, so they were never part of any reductions. We tried to protect some of the service delivery programs such as ones in water and sanitations and human settlements, but the magnitude of these budget reductions that we're facing right now are such that it is not possible for us to have these reductions without any implications. So the reason why we brought these implications for all the departments, Chairperson, is because all these departments will definitely be affected. So in terms of looking at the APPs of the departments, what their targets were, with these reductions, basically all the departments had to relook at their targets. They had to relook at what is it that they can achieve given these budget reductions. The one thing that we tried to do in this budget was to protect the capital spending, as I said earlier, vis-a-vis current spending. But if you look at the nature of the budget, especially the one that we're looking at, current spending is the majority of the budget. So you have 5 categories, Chairperson and honorable members, where you look at, it's compensation, it would be goods and services, it would be interest on land, or your debt servicing cost, which you really cannot touch because they are a direct charge. Then you have capital spending, and then you have transfers and subsidies. So most of these account for such a large portion of our spending that it's not possible for us to exclude some of these components in here. So the only way we tried to protect some of this was because of the alignment with the focus on infrastructure. The capital transfers is what we protected, and not Chairperson protecting by not considering them for reductions, but basically they are just growing by inflation. So the ones that were growing by faster than inflation, we had to align them to inflation. So basically what I think the best way to explain this, Chairperson and honorable members, in terms of how these budget reductions are going to implement, are going to affect growth, is looking at the package that was presented to Parliament. So what was presented to Parliament was a fiscal framework that the executive thinks if it is implemented, it's going to build some level of confidence. And as a result, we're going to see the economic growth estimates that we are proposing in the budget review. So Chairperson and honorable members, there has been no change in what we're presenting today vis-a-vis the growth numbers that are presented by the minister at the February budget. So this is just a breakdown of how the fiscal consolidation is going to affect the departments. But this is the overall package of the fiscal framework that was adopted by Parliament. I think the specific thing that we need to look at, Chairperson, is basically the Vulindlela. I think it's the Vulindlela unit that is in the Treasury, and basically it's a unit comprising of Treasury staff and also the presidency. The team that is leading that is Dr. Peterson Duncan, who can come and give the committee a presentation on how Vulindlela is supposed to work and what the functions are and how they're going to assist the departments in achieving the structural reforms that they have to implement to boost economic growth. So I think, Chairperson, in terms of what we're presenting today, we're not changing the overall package that was presented by the minister, even the growth estimates. Those growth estimates assume these reductions are implemented, because what we're looking at here, Chairperson and honorable members, is how do we then ensure that we have sustainable public finances and we stabilize our debt so that we reduce the cost of borrowing, and then we move or we repurpose the funding that would have gone to debt servicing cost, we channel it to more productive programs of government. So I think it's a full package rather than just looking at this budget reduction as changing what the minister presented. And another thing, what we, as I said, Chairperson, in terms of non-interest expenditure and the targets that we have been looking at in the past, is that the magnitude of the amount were not significant enough to, they were not that large. Of course, they were significant, but they were not that large. As I said, looking at 12 billion vis-a-vis 300 billion, it's much easier to find 12 billion with minimal impact on service delivery as compared to the 300 billion. Chairperson, what we have done so far as the National Treasury, we have asked GTEC to assist us in implementing the announced zero-based budgeting. I was still presenting the framework to the DGs of all departments, the framework. I'm waiting for my minister to give me a go-ahead so I can present it in cabinet. And of course, I can definitely come and present this framework to this committee so that the committee is put in confidence with what Treasury is trying to do in terms of improving spending efficiency and how do we then implement this zero-based budgeting. But basically, Chairperson and honorable members, what we're looking at is looking at doing a dive in on different programs through a tool that GTEC has developed, which we call a spending review. So what it does is it looks at the importance of the program, whether the program is still relevant or is it fit for purpose. It looks at the output of the programs, whether it is yielding the desired output and all of that. So it's a detailed analysis of each and every program that is there. We're going to do most of these for the two departments that we're piloting, which is Treasury and the public enterprises, but we are already skilling the different departments so that the departments can do these spending reviews so that they take responsibility of what they think is important. But Treasury, of course, will play a lead role in helping this department so that we make sure the work is done and there's accountability. And I think in the framework also, Chairperson and honorable members, we enhance the role of Parliament in terms of the responsibilities. So what we're proposing in the framework is that first of all, we present this framework to Parliament, but also the departments will then be responsible for implementing the outcomes of this framework so that it is very clear what departments has to do in terms of implementing the outcomes or the recommendations of this. So we don't want a situation where the information is not transparent and there's no accountability. But I think, Chairperson, through your office, I will request that I come and present this ZBP framework so that the committee has an understanding of what we are planning to do. In terms of status, you see, Chairperson, I think we are aware of the implications. We are aware of the consequences of these budget reductions. And when we were working with the cabinet and the executive and the ministers committee on the budget, we were very clear in explaining what the consequences of these budget reductions would be. And I mean, there is no doubt that some of the surveys in States SA are going to be affected. And there's no doubt that there will be some, they will still struggle to, you know, to fall within their expenditure ceiling or their compensation ceiling. But what we also have done for States SA as part of the spending review exercise that we did to try and help them improve efficiency in the spending, we looked at firstly we firstly looked at the personnel costs. So we went through the entire exercise of looking what are the personnel costs in States SA, you know, what is driving their personnel. And we did present this to the portfolio committee. And basically what we found, just in summary, Chairperson, is that the cost structure of States SA is not the same in different provinces. There's other provinces where the structure is top heavy, while in others, the structure is not so top heavy. So we asked them to have a look at the structure. We also said the properties that the office accommodation is not the same. So you have other provinces where the space is too large, and you have other provinces where the space occupied by a person per square meter is much less. So they need to standardize all of their office accommodation and make sure that they optimize on those so that they can reduce the costs. We also looked at the vehicles that are used in different provinces. In other provinces is 4 people per vehicle. In other provinces is 1 person per vehicle. So we asked them to relook at those. So, Chairperson and honorable members, the whole purpose of the spending reviews and the ZBB that we're going to do is to highlight some of these inefficiencies that we think the departments can improve upon to find savings. So I think we didn't just leave States SA to dry. We basically looked at the other avenues in their budget that they can look at so that they can improve efficiency. Chairperson, when we were doing the estimates for the census, most of these estimates we did work with States SA to come up with these estimates. But I think what I am very worried about, Chairperson, is that already States SA is showing underspending on the allocated money for the pilot of the census from last year. So we allocated them around 800 million, and so far it looks like they managed to spend just above half of that amount. So as much as there might be concerns that the funding is insufficient, what we need to see is States SA coming to Treasury and saying, we are done with the pilot. This is how much the pilot has cost us, and we have spent all the money that was allocated to us, and we need more funding. Now, if States SA is showing there's a possibility of an underspending in 2020-21, already that's a problem, Chairperson, because it means for this year, now we have to find the money somewhere else to give to States SA why it was already allocated. So when we have a conversation with states about insufficient funding, I think it would be fair to have that conversation with them, and they can show to us that the funding that has been allocated is insufficient for the purpose of the census. But for now, we only told that funding is not enough, but they haven't spent the money that we have allocated to them, which is a bit of a problem. Chairperson, to be fair, on your comment on the contingency reserve, to more than double it, I think the biggest worry that we had as the executive and as Treasury is that the worst thing that can happen to this country is to have a position where we can't deal with a possible 3rd wave or a possible 4th wave. We don't have enough money for the vaccines. We don't have enough money for the PPE. So I think when we look at the contingency reserve is that basically when you look at it, Chairperson, the amount that is there for the COVID or the response of COVID is about 7 billion. The other 5 billion, remember, Chairperson, you still have possibility of natural disasters or flooding or drought, or so there's still other unforeseeable and unavoidable expenditure that we will have to use this money for. So I think the worst embarrassment that we can get is a situation where we have to start now looking for donations because we didn't make funding sufficient for the vaccine. But what is good about the budget process, Chairperson, is that when we get to the MTBPS, then we can look at how much we have used of that contingency reserve and whether there's still sufficient money that we can allocate to other spending priorities. But I think for now, it is more of a safety measure and ensuring that there is sufficient amount of money that we have in terms of dealing with the pandemic that we don't know. And your question on the implications of not paying subscriptions, Chairperson, you're right. So there's different subscriptions that we pay. So for institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF, and as well as the NDB, the New Development Bank, the implications there are that the shareholding or our number of shares, of course, will decrease if you don't pay the subscriptions accordingly. But then you have other multilateral institutions where the implications are that basically we might lose our membership. But I think what is core is how the departments can negotiate with these multilaterals and explain the funding pressures that we face as the sovereign and the possibility of looking at a new repayment agreement between these institutions and the sovereign. So for example, if we have to pay the membership for 5 years, can we not negotiate with that institution to pay the membership over 10 years? So that is a possibility, and I think that's what the departments will have to embark on. But also, Chairperson, I think we shouldn't waste the crisis. This is the time where I think we as government and we as parliament, we have to look at the importance of these subscriptions, or for us to subscribe to these institutions. Are they adding value? Is it value for money, or we just subscribing to these entities? And do we need all of these subscriptions? Is it possible for us to leave others because there's no value added? But I think the review of these subscriptions right now, it is required so that we make sure there's value for money. And I think we can do that through the spending reviews and come back to Parliament and say, this is why we in this institution, these are the benefits, this is why we think we should stay, vis-a-vis this was an entity we joined this year, this was for a purpose of this, but now it's no longer serving purpose. So those are some of the things, Chairperson, that we will have to look at in terms of the spending reviews and its importance in terms of delivering what is required. I'm just going to ask quickly, Chairperson, in this order, and I hope my team, once the other one finishes talking, then the other one speaks, so that we can deal with the last questions or specific function questions. I'm going to ask Mark, then Lebu, then Julia, then Rendani, then Sabeni, then Ravesh, to deal with the specific questions. I hope they won't take too much of the time, if that's fine with you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson. I hope you can hear me. Just one or two very short responses to the few questions in the health and social development space. Just to mention, Chair, more broadly, I think on your comments around the key issue being the economy. I think it would be useful to get a broader presentation, as Dr. Mampo has said, from Duncan's team, possibly even along with some of the colleagues from the Reserve Bank. Some of the numbers do seem to be coming out, in a sense, more positively. For example, the revenue outturn, you'll remember from the medium-term budget policy statement, was projecting a 300 billion shortfall in last year, that is actually panned out to be around 160 billion shortfall. So fairly significantly better situation there. And some of the other variables across some of the growth axes looking, I think, a little more positive. Just on some of the spending reductions, most of our teams in public finance have done spending reviews looking at potential areas of efficiency savings with our departments or in various areas of our departments. So we're busy discussing those with our sectors. Then there was a specific question from Mr. Kayiso around national health insurance. If I could just try to respond to that quickly. So something that Parliament has a really important role on this one is that the bill has been before Parliament for almost 18 months or so now. So, I think Parliament does need to take that bill forward and decide what they want to do with the bill. If they want to change a few clauses and then pass the bill, or what, but that the passing of the NHI bill will be absolutely central to the progress on national health insurance. Then to say also that although it's true that some funds have been moved away from national health insurance, but also this was an area of very substantial underspending in the past. So in the context of a very tight budget, it was perhaps reasonable to shift some of the spending. Cabinet approved about a week or two back the appointment of the new DDG of national health insurance, who's very good. And I think that his appointment also will really help to take the NHI process forward. And there's also some contracting that's going to take place in the vaccine program, which is potentially going to be quite important for, have some quite important lessons for national health insurance. So, for example, if government works very substantially, for example, with the private sector, for example, dispensing vaccines through private pharmacies, and gazettes tariffs or lays out tariffs for, say, private pharmacies to give vaccines, that will be it will set very important lessons for government working together with the private sector to deliver health services on quite a large scale. Because if you make use of a lot of private pharmacies or private GPs, for example, in giving out COVID vaccines, that will be really important for kind of some of the future work that could potentially happen. Let me leave it there. Thank you on my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, Dr. Modise. On the question of the 700 hectare of land that is not being accessed by the small scale fund.